Hello and welcome to another episode of Half and Half podcast. Today I have with me Saliha Kadir. She is a counselor, a mental health counselor, a subject that is not talked about much. She's a mind healer, but actually, she's a mind and body healer because if the mind is not healed, the body cannot function properly. Welcome to my podcast, Saliha.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to having this conversation about such a meaningful and important topic for our community. So, thank you so much for that.
Of course, thank you for coming, making time for this podcast. And we would like to know a little bit about yourself, your childhood or early adulthood, and your brief journey towards why you became or chose to be a counselor.
Absolutely. Well, so my name is Saliha, and I am a mental health therapist. And so, a little bit about my background and my story is I was born and raised in Saudi Arabia. And I moved to the US around when I was like, I want to say 17 to pursue higher education in psychology and kind of mental health field. So from a young age, I kind of gravitated towards like mental health stuff and was interested in possibly becoming a psychiatrist. And then when I moved to the US and started pursuing my education over here, I decided to go into the counseling field instead. And just a shift was essentially that I like the idea of being able to have a safe space for clients and to have that one on one engagement with them and being able to have longer conversations than perhaps if I had gone into the medical field. So that's a little bit about me. And, sorry, kind of going back to, being
That's fine.
raised in Saudi Arabia, I think I consider that to be a significant part of my childhood because I look back at that time and there's a lot of joy, happiness, and fulfillment. I'm the youngest of five.
Wow.
So, mashallah. So, it was really nice kind of growing up with like a fuller family, and we're all really close. So, that also kind of like played an important role in being able to have this journey of, kind of moving to the US. And um, I came here, and my brothers were established here already. And so that also made adjusting here much easier for me. And for that, I'm like very grateful towards them for that because they've played a significant role in my educational journey here. So, and then even after that. So, not just the educational
Right,
part, but
right.
just
You
in
had the
general.
support all along.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So, was there any personal connection for example, my daughter wants to be a doctor
Hmm.
and she wants to be a hematologist, but there is a connection in personal connection towards it because my husband suffered a rare blood disorder
Oh,
and he passed away from that. So, my daughter really wants to go in that field,
hmm.
especially in hematology, so that he can save lives or change something that we couldn't do or the doctors couldn't figure out for his case.
Hmm.
So, everybody has a personal connection. So, is there anything that kind of like truly, is there like a strong why for your becoming a counselor or a mental health therapist?
It's such a cool question you asked because I feel like for me, there isn't a I want to say there isn't like a really emotional, deep story to it. It's more so that I think growing up, one of the things that I remember is that my dad used to watch a lot of documentaries on different topics, right? Just kind of exploring the human mind and the body. And he also is a very well read person. So I grew up where, like, books were a really big part
Right.
of my life. And I would always be curious about the books that he had, and many of them covered topics like psychology and the human psyche and understanding and like trying to understand emotions and feelings. So I would say that a little bit of that impacted me showing curiosity in that direction. And then I also want to say that coming from like a large family. So if I think about like, my parents and their siblings and then my mom, her like siblings and everything, it's a big family. And I think one thing So I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and then we would go back to Pakistan during the summer holidays and spend time with family over there. One thing I found really interesting was just how one situation or kind of like an experience just had, people reacted to it so differently emotionally, right? Somebody could experience annoyance, somebody else could experience frustration, and the ways that people would express their feelings and emotions in those situations. I think that really was like, huh, like what about a same experience makes people react to it so differently? I
Yeah.
found that to be very fascinating. So I think when it came time to pursuing higher education, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to be a doctor. Like, that was the idea in my mind, right? Like, I'm South Asian. So it was just like, you either become
A doctor or an engineer or a lawyer.
or a lawyer, absolutely. And so engineer in my household was kind of covered. My dad is an engineer. And mashallah, I have three brothers. They're all engineers. And then my sister-in-laws are also kind of a part of the field. And so the engineering field was covered. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll become a doctor. And so I thought that my path was going to be becoming a psychiatrist. And I want to say that honestly, it wasn't until after I graduated from undergrad that I really was like, do I want to be a psychiatrist or do I want to pursue something else? So there isn't a one big emotional moment behind
But
it.
it's like all along there are like small elements or stories that kind of like led you to become who you are today.
Mhm,
And that's wonderful. And I agree because in South Asian household, me being coming from there, my dad is an engineer, my husband was an engineer, and we have tons of engineers in the family and doctors. And
mhm,
then, so and it's the culture that, if you are not in the science pathway, you are not smart.
mhm,
And I feel like that needs to go because every profession, I always wanted to become an English teacher, but I did my undergrad because my dad wanted me to
mhm,
go in take the science pathway,
mhm,
even though I was not a science student or it didn't fascinate me at all. But I'm like, I'm that good, nice daughter
yeah,
who love her parents, and then I wanted to do whatever makes them happy.
mhm,
That's what typically we do, right?
absolutely.
And then later on in life, my husband, who is the greatest motivation in my life,
Mashallah.
and he supported me in every walk of life, everything. I think the positivity, and then, circling back to mental health, healthy mind and healthy body.
Mhm,
Um, I think healthy body cannot be achieved if your mind is not healthy. And my
absolutely.
husband, contributed that in that domain 100%. He made sure that my mind is healthy. He taught me what happiness is, what love is, what ambition is, everything. So may Allah bless him with the highest place in Jannah.
Inshallah, I mean.
And so he told me that no, you can actually do whatever you like. Why
Mhm,
are you killing yourself sitting in a desk 9 to 5, but you don't like?
mhm,
And I told him that I want to become a wedding planner, and he said, go for it. Then I said, I want to teach and interact with people.
mhm,
And I think that helped me in my like after I lost him, I
mhm,
think that grief would have taken over if I would not have been in a setting where I interacted with people, especially children,
mhm.
nurturing those young minds. I think I would have just drowned
Mm,
in grief if they would not have been there around. So I think teaching is a wonderful profession. Yes, it is hard.
mhm,
It is underpaid and it is hard, and I'm saying it out loud, but it
absolutely.
is so rewarding, so satisfying. I go in the morning every day thinking, oh my God, I have a whole day,
Mhm,
dealing with those kiddos who drive me sometimes absolutely crazy. But I come out with a smile thinking, I'm going to go back tomorrow again
mhm,
and make an impact in those lives.
mhm.
Even if you can make an impact in one life, that's worth it.
Absolutely, mashallah.
So I think, and I have seen people that the mental health or um, depression, it kind of like stems from when people are not doing what they actually want to do,
Mhm.
and they're told to do something else.
Mhm.
They are doing something against their own will. And that's how kind of like, they're not happy about it.
Mhm.
And right, so happiness and mental health are so much interconnected.
Mhm.
Um, then they don't find passion in what they're doing. And then, like later in life, I mean, if you're not passionate about something, just imagine if you're doing every day and in and a day out something that you're not passionate about, then you at the end of the day, it will not make you happy. You'll be frustrated. And as you said, frustration will come. And
Absolutely.
then, also I think for women, it's also the self-worth
Mm.
that people that's not talked about. And coming from South Asian culture,
Mhm.
it's the women in general now, it's getting much better. I mean,
Mhm.
people are aware, they are motivating them, but it depends. I mean, maybe from the household I came or you came from, we
Mhm.
are encouraged to
Mhm.
break the ceiling. But I'm talking in general. I mean, they are not motivated or encouraged enough. And I think that needs to happen. I mean, they don't feel worthy most of the time. And I
Oh,
think
that's
that
so true.
the self confidence and low self esteem leads to all kinds of mental health problems later in life. And I've seen that. What is your take on that? I think, I mean,
I wanted it's like first of all, I wanted to start off by saying that, it's so beautiful to hear about your story with your husband, mashallah. You can tell that he had such a influential role in you being the person that you are today, right? And I feel like it's in this and I'm going to tie it back to what we kind of
yes,
like started off with. I think one, there are women these days, right, who are like there are these expectations of like what a strong independent woman looks like, and I think part of that is on one end, providing women with that confidence to be strong and independent and to believe in themselves is a very beautiful thing. But at the same time, for women that are married or that do want to get married and they want that to be a part of their life, I also think it's so important to talk about the support that comes from a partner that truly gets you and understands you. And so when I hear you talk about your husband, you can tell that he played such a significant
he
role
did.
in empowering you to be the best version of yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's such a powerful experience. And I think in this day and age, it is important for women to know that you can have a relationship where you should be able to ask for that kind of support, in my opinion, right?
Yes,
So I just wanted to start off by like
yes.
thank you so much for like sharing that, and then I was gonna kind of like focus on like like mental health issues and expectations, especially. And I actually had a question for you. Would you say that you are the like eldest daughter in your household or
I am. I
okay.
am the eldest daughter, not only in my household, but in the family
Hmm.
from my paternal and my maternal side.
Okay. Okay.
So my cousins, my siblings, I have one sister, and then my cousins, we grew up together. So they're kind of like my siblings.
Okay.
And so they all look up to me,
Okay.
and they kind of like they always tell me that, oh, you know um you inspire us. But I know myself that I would not have been half of what I am if I would not have the man in my life that I had.
Hmm.
He infused so much positivity in me that it can go like few lifetimes, and that is so important. I think mental health, when we talk about
Hmm.
mind healing, it it needs support, it needs nurturing, it
Hmm.
needs love. You cannot expect somebody to be mentally healthy without providing those support,
Oh,
especially
absolutely.
women who are wearing so many hats. Being a mother, being I mean, nowadays most of the women work,
Hmm.
at home, like they become the nurse, they become like, they are like, they wear so many hats in different times of the day, or throughout their lives. But are they appreciated enough? Are they getting their um due respect or appreciation? I think maybe now it's a lot more than before,
Hmm.
but I think the awareness needs to happen more.
Absolutely.
And talking about mental health, I mean, because this is in women empowerment, I mean, I'm focusing more on
Mhm.
women. But generally mental health, I think, when you see any person who is depressed, or
Mhm.
I mean, grief itself is a different thing, like
Mhm.
when you lose somebody, a dear one, a loved one. But sometimes people, even without losing someone, they are depressed, and
Oh,
they don't know,
absolutely.
like, their purpose in life and why that's happening. There are so many reasons. I mean, I know people who are just think that they're not good enough. And why they think that way? I mean, there got to be, if you are not clinically diagnosed as, you're not, your depression is not clinical,
Mhm.
then why it's happening? There got to be some reasons, like at some point in your life, that
Oh,
you were
absolutely.
told that you are not good enough.
Absolutely. And that, the reason that I actually asked the question of like, hey, were you the eldest? Because I feel like, oh my gosh, we could do like a whole podcast on just the healing that the eldest daughters in a South Asian household require. Because I feel like they carry so many different responsibilities. And I so one thing I want to clarify as I talk about this, really, we're talking about like where do all these things stem from? Like whether it's depression, whether as women it's people pleasing, whether it is confidence and worth issues. I feel like all of this starts in your childhood, right? And one thing I wanted to just kind of start off with, like we all know that our parents wanted the best for us and that they wanted us to have opportunities that perhaps they didn't have themselves growing up, right?
Right,
And they wanted to make sure that, okay, you have a good education, you have all the basic necessities, and you're well taken care of. And oftentimes, just the traumas that they've personally carried through generations kind of comes in the way of them being able to create a safe space to have emotional dialogues and conversations with their kids,
right,
which I think is shifting in this
right.
generation, which is a powerful thing in itself. But I want to start off by saying that because a lot of these things kind of start off in your childhood, right? And like kind of just using the example of eldest daughters, let's say. And we're going to talk about like women, but just I wanted to use the example of eldest daughters because they wear so many different hats, right? They're the eldest. So there's a responsibility that comes with that, especially if you have younger siblings or you grew up in with your cousins and everything. Everybody is looking up to you, right?
Mm.
And you get applauded and you get appreciated anytime you do good, whether it's you do good in education, anytime you behave in a manner which is like, of let's say you're 8 and you're behaving like somebody who's 12 or 14 and is mature, that behavior is applauded and like, oh, she's so mature. She takes care of all of the things in the house. She helps with the younger siblings. So growing up hearing dialogue like that reinforces this idea that my worth, unintentionally, right? My worth is associated with how much good I bring to the household,
Hmm.
right? If I'm helpful, I'm appreciated. When I'm needed, I feel seen and understood. So those things kind of get reinforced. And so then you grow up and you're always taking care of everybody else. You are always thinking about making everybody else happy. And okay, I have to behave in a certain manner because if I don't, then I might disappoint people in my life. And I don't want to do that. Right. And so I think like, I noticed that women typically in their 20s and 30s then are like, oh my gosh, like, who am I truly? If I'm not a good daughter, a good sister, or a good wife, or a good mother, and or maybe I'm excelling at my profession, if I am not all these different roles in my life, who am I truly?
Yeah, I mean, that's the, like, they're like defining themselves basically, like,
Mhm.
I am going to talk, like, about, as you mentioned, eldest daughter. For my case, I would say I was very pampered
Mhm.
in my household. I always was very vocal.
Mhm.
about what I felt. I always spoke my mind. That's a good and bad thing because sometimes it can get you in trouble.
Absolutely, it can.
And I got that from my dad. And if my
Mhm.
dad watches this podcast, I mean, he can kill me, but I'm going to say that, I got that from my dad
You can
because
say to him, "Well, I got it from you."
yes, yes, absolutely. But I have been always, since my childhood, I've been very vocal. I'm very different from my younger sister, who is very nice, but she would never say something that she might even think that it might hurt someone's feelings.
Mm.
Or it's
Mhm.
not that I would do that, but I am kind of like whenever I'm seeing something happening which should not be happening, I would give my 2 cents.
Like, when it comes to, like, a sense of justice sort of thing and advocating, like, "Okay, I don't think that this is a good thing, so let me speak up here and say what I need to."
Right, right. And I have always been like that. So when you talk about being the eldest, yes, I did my duties, which I did it with very loudly and proudly.
Mhm,
So I was never actually in my household told that you need to do it,
mhm,
but I kind of like I'm like, I will lead the pack, you know?
mhm,
So I know it can be different for different people.
mhm,
Now, if my sister would have been told, you have to lead the pack,
mhm.
she is an excellent she's in excelling in excelled in her academics, she's excelling in her career, but she's a very shy person. She's
Mm,
not that outspoken.
mhm,
She keeps things to herself. So now leading the pack for her would
mm,
not be a like good idea, right?
mhm,
So for me, it was like, so it kind of like aligned with me
mhm,
being the eldest daughter
mhm,
and my personality. So,
which is great.
which is great. I mean, probably but for some people
Mhm,
who are not that, what do you call outspoken
mhm,
or outgoing or social, and not that person who wants to lead in everything and
mhm,
excel in, that might be a problem.
mhm.
And excelling, I would say, I will redefine that part, like, or modify that part, like excelling means like we women are always expected to be perfect,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
yeah, and imperfection is not allowed for women,
Mhm.
whereas the boys or the men are allowed to be imperfect and they're allowed to make
They're allowed
mistakes.
to make mistakes.
And my husband always used to say that, the mothers need to stop saying that boys will always be boys.
Mm.
That needs to go.
Oh, I
So,
really like that.
yeah. And so if the moms like us, we are teaching the right things to our sons, then the society will change.
Mhm,
The society will flourish. So I feel like when women blame others, the fingers point to them as well.
mhm.
Sometimes maybe they're not teaching the right things to their sons, they're differentiating, like whatever treatment they got in childhood, they are repeating that
Oh my
treatment.
gosh, that is such a important topic, yeah.
Yeah, and they are like, okay, I was not treated well. No, just because you are not treated well, you need to treat others better.
Mhm,
Your sons should know that the women need to be respected, nurtured. And that's how I learned from my husband. He always taught there is no differentiation between my son and my daughter.
mhm.
Actually, my daughter is the queen of this house, and my son kind
I
of
love
like
that.
listens to whatever. I mean, he's mashallah a very good
Mashallah.
good boy, but it's my husband said, no, she is your younger sister. You need to listen to her and be there for her.
Mhm,
And if she is doing some chores today, you should do the chores tomorrow.
mhm,
It's not that women should cook and clean and the men would watch TV. So
mhm,
that needs to go. Yes. And that has been implemented in my household. And I wish and pray that is implemented in other households, and
mm,
especially in South Asian households,
mhm,
in Arab households, where boys are always boys,
mhm.
right? So I know we can talk about it for
On
hours,
yes.
but I'm going to like shift the focus to something else, like more specific, asking you, why what do you think, what do you see that's the primary cause of mental health, like depression or anxiety? What is the primary cause? When, because I know you are a professional counselor and you see patients,
Mhm.
so what is the, I mean, I would like to know, and I'm sure everybody would like to know, what is the primary cause of that?
So I'm gonna kind of like give a little bit of, and maybe I might sound a little clinical, so just a warning. And part of it is I feel like there isn't, it wouldn't be fair to say that, okay, this is what causes depression, and this is the one thing that we focus on and we pay attention to, and then we don't take account of all of the other things, right? And so, one thing is that I typically tell people that, I would categorize depression into a category
Hmm.
of, there's clinical depression, there is seasonal depression, and then there's situational depression.
Hmm.
And this is at a very basic level when we talk about it, right? Because depression is both like a biological issue, right? There's an internal kind of
Right.
neurotransmitters and chemicals that are like imbalanced that can cause depression. And then anxiety usually stems as a symptom of depression, but anxiety can be something that happens outside of depression as well. So I want to make sure that I give it like the proper knowledge that it's deserving of. And so if I were to talk about clinical depression, right? Clinical depression is where you would require medication in the sense that there are chemical imbalances in your body. Because
Hmm.
again, like their depression has a biological basis to
Right.
it as well, right?
Absolutely.
And so, because of these chemical imbalances, you've tried multiple different things. You've tried to be active, you've tried mindfulness, you've gone to therapy, you've talked about your feelings and emotions and regulations, which is good because you want that. You want to continue those things, but you still kind of feel tired, fatigued. You're experiencing a lot of emotional numbness. It's difficult to do day to day tasks. And
Right.
when I say difficult to do day to day tasks, I'm talking about some people will have difficulty getting out of bed
Mm.
to go to work. Some people will have difficulty wanting to even take a shower because it's like the idea of it is very daunting for them.
Right.
And in that case, that's why I kind of go back to, you have to take medication, right? Because you're doing all of the things, but you need the chemical imbalances to be fixed. So that's clinical depression. And then we have situational depression. In situational depression, what happens is there's a situation that's going on in your life. It could be a, like, work is very emotionally draining. There are a lot of different projects that are due. Your manager has a lot of expectations of you. Financial considerations are there. And so you're just tired
Mm.
and constantly hustling all the time. And it's a lot that can cause you to feel really stressed. And now the idea of going to work every day, maybe at one point it was like, oh, I feel like I take pride in my work. This is really meaningful for me. But now it's shifted. And so that's a situation where you can experience depression. And if we give another example of situational depression, it could be grief of a really deep kind. It, like perhaps an ending of a relationship, somebody has passed away. And it makes sense that you would experience heightened emotions during those
Mhm.
situations, which can ultimately lead people to have depression, right?
Right.
And then we have our seasonal depression. So, seasonal depression, the best way to describe it is during the winter months, right? There isn't as much opportunity to, let's say, go out
Mhm.
and do things, or maybe, you had a certain routine during the summer months, which I feel like in Dallas, though it's so hot that you can't really go out and do things
Yeah.
as much. But technically, seasonal depression is the changing of your mood that is associated with the seasons, where you may feel down certain seasons and you may feel happiness and joy. And again, just because you're depressed doesn't mean that you're only sad or you're only experiencing emotional numbness. You still have moments of joy and happiness,
Mhm.
but for a lot of people, it can be a little difficult to stay in those moments of happiness and joy because it's almost scary.
Mhm.
Once you are used to, let's say, the sadness, perhaps the loneliness, the disconnection that comes with depression, um, it becomes difficult to hold on to the joy and happiness in moments, right? And so those are just kind of, I want to say that that's what I would describe depression as. And, you know, I'm going to shift focus a little bit because I feel like, so I've been a therapist for almost 7 years now. I've been practicing, and I went to school here at SMU in Dallas, so I have my license to practice here, right? One thing I notice when it comes to depression or anxiety in the South Asian community
Hmm.
specifically is that um, not that it's different from the traditional description of depression per se. It's just that, of course, culturally, there are nuances that are there that impact you in how you grow up and how you're
Hmm.
raised, what your living experiences are, how you are personally as a person. Like, even if you just use the example, right? Like, for you, as an eldest daughter, you grew up because of your personality kind of thriving in that role, right?
I did. I did.
And,
And also my parents actually played role
mhm,
because they're also overtly ambitious.
mhm,
So when I was since my childhood, it was put in my head that you have to be someone,
mhm,
never stop dreaming, you can reach the sky. And then later on in my life, when I got married to this man who was like even more ambitious, and
yeah.
it just added to it. He was like, do whatever you want,
Mhm,
as long as you were, I mean, being a Muslim, practicing Muslim, as long as you're within your Islamic boundary,
mhm,
which I always remained
mhm.
by the mercy of God.
Alhamdulillah.
Um, so, in keeping it within that boundary, whatever way you can excel,
Mhm,
go for it.
mhm,
Nothing should hold you back because you are a woman.
mhm.
No, I think a woman can do as much or even more.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. And I think that that is like perfect, like that example of like you grew up where some people might have the same thing and it might be too much for them. They might grow up and they might be like, okay, who am I as a person? And that perfection, right? Like earlier, I know you talked about perfectionism and how women are expected to be perfect.
Right.
So there's some times where you can thrive in a certain set of circumstances with yourself and the support system in your life. And in other times that very same kind of setting can cause this idea of like, I'm never good enough. I have to constantly keep going and keep doing things, and my worth and confidence as a person is impacted. And so I feel like in the South Asian community, I notice that sometimes women, when they put this kind of, whether society puts these expectations on them, their childhood experiences put these expectations on them, and that kind of leads to this, what is my self-worth? Right? Like I constantly have to keep doing things. I have to be doing all these things to be considered good enough. And so I notice for women specifically, that kind of causes a lot of anxiety and depression.
Right.
And, I also don't want to just kind of end at like, okay, this is what causes depression.
No,
And
no, no. I know you are putting that in the category of South Asian girls,
hmm
which I totally agree with you because
hmm
I have not experienced, but I have seen people
hmm
from that culture
hmm
who was not kind of like, um, who was told that they were told that they're not good enough,
hmm
or they're not worthy of
hmm
whatever whoever they are. And that from childhood, just imagine if they are hearing since they were 5 or 4.
hmm
So when they reach in their early 20s or mid 20s, their confidence and self esteem is
hmm
crushed.
hmm
So that just to get up, just to,
hmm
and not everybody has that willpower or strength
hmm
to kind of shrug those things off and like, no,
hmm
I mean, you don't define my worth. I know my worth.
hmm
And not everybody has that. I mean, I thank first and foremost Allah and my parents and my husband
Alhamdulillah.
to support me. But first, I would always thank Allah that, if someone tells me that you are not worthy, I would tell that the door is open. Y-
See yourself
y-
out, please.
yes, help yourself out. I know my worth. You are not there to define my worth.
hmm
And I'm not saying that some people did not tell me that. not in my family,
Mhm.
but you face things in life. It's not a bed of roses. It's
Mhm.
not like everybody's saying that, oh, you are excellent, you are very good.
Mhm.
There will be moments, there will be times that sometimes will, some people will question your worth. Some people will ask you that, but you need to tell them that you are not worthy in my life.
Mhm.
So you need to weed out those people
Mhm.
as fast as you can. And
Mhm.
I weeded them out.
Perfect.
You just know them. They're not important. They don't add value in your life. They're not adding any credibility in your life.
Mhm.
So you just weed them like seasonal weeding.
Oh, absolutely. That's such a wonderful way
Yeah,
of putting it.
but then again, not everyone is like that.
Mhm.
People will think that, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And that would just, every single day, they will be just drowning
Mhm.
in that horrible feeling,
Mhm.
and nobody's there to boost their ego or kind of like praise them enough or tell them that, no, you are worthy.
You're worthy. Yeah.
So I think that needs to be told a lot more in South Asian
Mhm.
cultures in from early on childhood.
If I could add to that, I was going to say that one thing, and, kind of going back to you mentioned, how your husband basically was like, okay, my daughter is the queen of the household, right? And I'm raising both of my kids to know that they're equal and, they both have to do chores and they have to be helpful and they have to take care of each other and that it's like a shared experience for both
Right.
of them, right? And I think, one that's of course really beautiful. I think one thing our community needs to change. Like I know that there's a shift that's taking place, so I do want to, bring that to attention. But this catchphrase of "log kya kahenge," oh my gosh, like I feel like, but what will people say? I think that is something that just needs to change because so much of how people still raise their children is rooted in ideologies that are not helpful,
Mm-mm.
right? That are basically fear based of like, oh, but let's say if you're growing up here in the West, right? Oh, but if we don't teach our kid these things or if we don't tell them about these limitations, and then, they won't follow the traditions. But some of those traditions need to be challenged a little bit, right? Like this idea of raising daughters differently than sons is just like not okay, right? Like you want to raise each gender to be able to live up to their strengths in society and know that they are in the eyes of God they're equal. And
Absolutely.
that's why I think it's so beautiful when you talk about like Allah first, right? Religion first. And I mean, even our religion teaches us the equality in that
Of
gender,
course.
right? And making sure that your daughters and sons are both considered blessings and raised in that manner. But I just wanted to say that I think that this idea does impact people in the South Asian community of like, first, there are expectations sometimes that come at home. And then there's these expectations of like, but what will people say? Right? Like if I advocate for myself, if I say that, hey, you know what, you have this idea of me that I just don't think is okay. And I have worked really hard as a female to be where I am today. And I'm proud of myself and I want to take a stand for that. But there's sometimes people are like, oh, I can't say that. What if it hurts their feelings? What if they get offended? There's somebody I know in the community. I mean, you have to challenge some of those thinkings respectfully, though.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, traditions, ideologies. I mean, and I would say not only South Asian cultures, I have seen Arab households, which are
Oh, absolutely. I do
absolutely
mean the Middle Eastern culture
same
as well. Yeah.
or maybe more.
Hmm.
Like even amongst Americans, I mean, maybe there is not like they will not speak out loudly,
Hmm.
but there is this undertone.
Hmm.
I mean, there are some preferences in a lot of the households I have seen, even amongst whites or Caucasian people, Americans. So, but because we grew up in a South Asian culture, we saw, I
Hmm.
mean, we can speak for them more.
Hmm.
Um, Talking about what you said that the traditions need to change, ideologies need to change. Absolutely. I mean, just because my grandparents have done that, it doesn't mean they did the right thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have that strength or courage to say that, no, my nana was wrong. My dada was wrong.
Hmm.
They might be amazing people, but they were wrong.
Hmm.
I think nobody has that courage. And then, it's passed down. Your parents are saying, okay, your grandparents, your ancestors have said that,
Mhm,
have done that, but they might not have done the right thing because they don't have the skills, right?
mhm,
I mean, they're raising probably their upbringing. I'm not saying everybody. I'm not just stereotyping any,
mhm,
but I'm just saying that their upbringing of their children might not be great because maybe they are doing it because how they were brought up.
mhm,
And maybe that is the root cause of the problem.
mhm,
They were not maybe brought up in the right way. I mean, some people are abusive, but they say that, oh, this is the male thing in South Asian cultures.
mhm.
No, that's abuse. We call
Absolutely.
that pure and simple abuse. So if
Absolutely.
your grandpa or grandma is abusive, call that abuse and say that they were wrong.
Sometimes I've heard, and again, not just throw anybody under the bus, but since we're talking about challenging ideologies from previous
Mm.
generations, I know something you said that was really cool was that maybe they don't have the skill set, right? And they might not even have had the resources that we
Yes,
have today.
absolutely.
Like, I feel like it's a resource, even being able to talk about this, have this conversation.
Hmm.
It really just shows things have changed for women to be able to have a platform where they can talk about these things and how mental health issues and expectations and boundaries
Start. Yeah.
start and how they impact their lives, right? But I it's we you had mentioned it earlier as well, and it's like women sometimes experience certain abuses and traumatic experiences, whether it is in their families, whether it is with their in-laws, and I'm talking about older
Hmm.
generation,
Right,
right?
right.
Or the previous generations. And they internalize that back then of like they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the space to escape, they didn't have a space to even be able to call it out for what it was, like you said, like abuse. Like if it's abusive, then it's abusive, whether it's emotional manipulation, whether it's verbal abuse, all of that is it's an under the abuse
But they
category
don't have the skills to even know that they're abusing.
because that's what's been going on for
Yeah, and that was
generations.
that was accepted,
That was
right?
acceptable, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that then the idea comes that, oh, but you know what? Like minimizing. One thing that also sometimes happens, and I'm glad that it's changing and it needs to continue to change, is minimizing people's feelings, emotions, and lived experiences, right? Oh, but I had that happen to me, or I experienced that. It's okay if you experience it.
Right.
It's okay if my son does something because, well, his father did it. His father did it before that. Like, but no, that is not okay and that is not acceptable. So I'm glad that our society is changing in regards to that, but it needs to change even
Change
more.
even more, right?
It
And
needs to.
yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. And if you are the first person to make that change, I would say go for it.
Hmm.
You be that first change because I was raised in a household I had great parents, had very progressive mindset. But they were strict.
Hmm.
My dad is a perfectionist. He's a chemical engineer. He worked more than half of his life in Dubai,
Hmm.
no oil company.
Hmm.
And my mom was a teacher for almost 25 years.
Oh, mashallah.
She was an English teacher too. So my parents were very strict
Hmm.
and they wanted us to excel academically. Um, but I'm going to say for me, always wanted that, I needed that freedom. Like it's not that they kind of didn't give me, but I wished that they were less strict with me and
Hmm.
let me do things more
Hmm.
that would make me maybe happier as a child,
Hmm.
right? So I'm going to make those things happen in my daughter's life.
Hmm.
I'm not saying my parents raised me really well. I have traveled the world.
Oh,
I have done everything, but just just like okay, you cannot go to certain places and I mean and I those things are good to set boundaries. I'm not saying that you should
God.
not have boundaries, but I feel like I should be a friend to my children and
Hmm.
I should give them that liberty or freedom
Hmm.
and trust them.
Hmm.
And if you trust your children, they will never disappoint you. Most of them,
If you
they will.
absolutely.
If you put your trust in Allah and in them, they will know that my mom trusts me and I will never let her down. So I want to do those things that I want to make those changes in their lives that probably I did not have the privilege growing up.
Mhm.
I'm not that strict with them. And now saying that, I have my boundaries and expectations. Those are very high. So
Mhm.
they know that these are the things we cannot do with mom.
Mhm.
But apart from that, everything, yes, like you have only one life. Enjoy, you have only one childhood.
Mhm.
And that is so important.
Mhm.
Childhood, in the more, I mean, I think, again, going back to the depression and mental health, like if your childhood is not fulfilling
Mhm.
and a memorable, happy one,
Mhm.
you would not be able to excel or function well in your adulthood.
Oh,
They are
absolutely.
so interconnected and intertwined
Mhm.
together. And I think most of us, or most of the South Asian parents, they do not even have the skill, because I don't blame them, because they did not even learn
Mhm.
how that they know that, okay, if my child is a lawyer, doctor, at the end of the day, they're married off well, they're earning well, they're managing their household well,
Mhm.
I have raised them well.
Mhm.
But it goes a lot more beyond
Mhm.
that, right? And that skill I wouldn't have learned if I would not have been married to my husband. He told me, and this is a personal short story off topic. I was studying for an exam in UTD, like the night before the exam. I was really studying hard, and um, it was Friday night. And he came to me and he's like, "What are you doing? Let's go for a drive." And I said, "Well, I'm studying for the exam." And he said that you don't have to get an A. Who said you have to get an A? You can get a B. That's okay. Nobody's going to see your transcript. I mean, and that thing impacted me so heavily because I was always told or raised that you have to get an A.
He gave you the
He
permission
gave
to
me the
just
permission to be who you are, or let yourself make some mistakes in life and, not be perfect all the time.
Mhm.
So that's my first time I was allowed to be imperfect.
Mm.
And we should let our children to be imperfect sometimes, right?
I feel like, thank you for sharing that story because I think it's such a powerful story in the sense that giving people the permission to make mistakes is such a powerful way of raising kids, right? Because as humans, you're going to make mistakes. You
You
are,
absolutely.
you're not perfect. And that's okay. And that is okay. Like, I feel like it's something that people have to tell themselves. It is okay to not be perfect. It's okay to not constantly be doing. And, even in the story that you shared, just the permission of being able to, like, hey, I will still love you. I will still care about you. And nothing about you changes in my eyes. I will see you the same way if you get a B, right? And the reason why I bring up the conditionality aspect of it is I think it's like you said, like our parents have done the best with what they had. And I think part of it is that for them, um, they might have grown up in a household where they may have seen difficulties, right? Like, and they grew up in a different generation. Success for them really is tied to having the financial means to be able to have a good life,
Right.
where you have all of the things that you need to be able to live a fulfilling life. Like, and not to say that happiness and joy isn't a part of it. Of course, it is. But no one is prioritizing and raising their children from that generation from a place of like, how much happiness have you had today? How much joy have you experienced today? It's like, did you do your homework? What grades are you getting? How much of this extracurricular activity did you do?
But that's so sad, right?
Yeah.
That is so sad. I feel like, to me, I think the most successful people who have of a good health and are happy. I
Mm-hmm.
think the rest will follow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many patients or how many clients you have who have reached the top, at the top of their ladder?
Mm-hmm.
They're making six figures, they
Mm-hmm.
have earned all the titles they could, but are they happy? What are they doing with that title? What are they doing with that money? Because they have nobody to share with,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't have that self, what do you call, that happiness inside them to kind of like make their life fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that kind of like comes down to having nothing.
And I wanted to add to that in the sense that I have worked with some really remarkable women, right? And one of the things that I will tell them, and sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's sad because these women are remarkable. They hold high positions in companies or they're very successful in their professions. Many of them tend to be eldest daughters in a South Asian household. And there's this idea of like, I'm not doing enough. I'm still not perfect. I need to do more. I need to always be successful. And then there comes this part of like, I've been doing so much, but I have not really paused and thought about how happy am I in my life? Like, I'm doing all of these things that need to be done, but am I happy? And I think that that really just stems from just how you are raised. And that's why it is so important to incorporate emotions and feelings because your childhood impacts everything as
Oh,
an
yeah,
adult. Your
absolutely.
attachment style in friendships, your attachment style to your partner, everything is impacted. Your confidence in life is impacted by how you were raised, right? And so that's why this permission of like, you can make a mistake. And as a parent, I will still love you. If you get a B, you get a C, I will still love you. And I will make sure that if we really truly need to work on it, that you're given the resources to be able to be successful in life. But
Absolutely.
my love towards you is not conditional
Or
to
tied
how
to.
yes,
Yes.
is not tied to your performance in academics, your good behavior, that I'm only nice to you when your behavior suits me or is good for me, and then otherwise I'll tell you that hey, you're not a good kid or that you need to do better. And I know that our generation is really like working on that and changing that, but we need to like truly be intentional about it. And I'm going to actually share a personal story here as well that I'm a mom to a absolutely adorable mashallah 2 year old, almost 2 year old. And one thing in this motherhood journey for me, and I share this because I feel like, oh my gosh, as a mom, right, you're expected to be perfect, you're
Right.
expected to face all of these challenges. And one, though I'm very grateful to have a partner that's very supportive of my dreams and very supportive throughout this journey. He isn't a babysitter father. Like he's truly, a father that like shows up for all the important things. And I'm very grateful for that. So I do want to say that I recognize that I might have a privilege in this that sometimes women don't
Don't
necessarily
have.
have, right?
Right.
Whereas a mom, they really have to do everything.
Hmm.
And so, just sharing that, but I do notice that there is this idea of being perfect as a mother. I cannot make a mistake, especially if I'm raising a boy in today's society. I want to make sure that I raise a boy that's a kind human, right? So like, for me, I think in the beginning there's this idea of like, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to mess up. I want to show up as this perfect mom. I can't say this. I have to teach him this. And then I have to remind myself like he's not even 2, right? Like he's just turning 2. And the reason that I was sharing this is sometimes when he does something, there's this internal dialogue of like, oh my gosh, I want to yell, like, don't do that. And I have to remind myself of, again, my parents are wonderful, remarkable people, but I sometimes think about my own childhood experiences and some of the things that my mom has said or when we were growing up. And I'm like, you know what? I love my mom, but I don't want to, this is not something that I would like to repeat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
And
exactly,
yeah.
that's, I mean, I love my parents too.
Hmm.
I love them. They're wonderful. But then you don't want to repeat those things that they have
Hmm.
done because those are not ideal things to do, right? Sorry to interrupt
Oh,
in
no,
that.
no, no. I feel like it's this moment, like even I say that I make mistakes sometimes in that journey, right? But I also learn from that.
Hmm.
Oh, I did this last time and I don't think that that was right. So I'm going to go to my kid and I'm going to say that, hey, I know he's really young right now, but I do like, will say that, oh, I'm sorry I said
Right.
that. I'm sorry that mama did this. And like, we don't do this because it's dirty or we don't touch this because it's dangerous. Like, still being able to, like, say those things, but I feel like I'm just so early on in this journey, but it's a humbling experience of being like, as an adult, you have to do this self reflection of I need to think about the things that I was raised with. I need to do an inventory of that. And I need to be like, here are the things that I want to take forward because they were really meaningful and important. And I value these things, right? And here are the things that I need to change about how I was
Absolutely.
raised.
Absolutely. Like I would take forward with me about how my dad instilled that, women can achieve anything and everything.
Hmm.
I think he instilled that early on childhood, and then my husband later on kind of like reinforced that
Hmm.
200 times. Uh, so, but the things that sometimes probably my parents were too strict
Hmm.
in a certain way. So I mean, as I said, I love them and they did a lot for me and they have been doing a lot for me. They have
Hmm.
been the biggest support in my life. But I would change some things, and I
Hmm.
did change a lot of things how I raised my children.
Hmm.
And for motherhood, for your children, they are your children.
Hmm.
Some things that might work for your child that might not work for somebody
Hmm.
else, and it goes vice versa. So you might be the perfect mother for your child,
Hmm.
but for someone else's. So as long as you are doing full justice to your children's needs and requirements, I think you are good. As long as there is unconditional love and trust and understanding between you guys, I mean, that is more than enough. I think that will just go a long way,
Hmm.
you know?
I feel like as a parent, you have this idea when you're expecting, right? And you're like, okay, what type of parent do I want to be? I want to be this way. I want to be this way. I feel like it's not really a role you can practice for. You can do the work, you can do the self reflection. But at the end of it, you have to show up for your child and how your child needs you to show up for them, right?
Right.
And, with your story with your parents, I was going to say that, given that we're talking about female empowerment as kind of like part of the topic, like for me, when I think about empowered women, right, I think about the women close in my life, right? And I even think about just mothers in general. I think my mom has played a significant role in how I see women, right? She raised us to be independent and strong. And I'm talking about growing up in Saudi Arabia in the 80s and the 90s, right? Where women at that time did not drive over there. They did not like really go outside and
Right.
do much
Mm.
without their husbands. My mom did everything. She would take us anywhere, any new park that opened up, any new shopping mall that opened up. She would take us out to eat. Like she was very much involved in the community. So as a woman,
She was the role model,
she was a role
and you
model,
have
right?
to.
Like as
Yeah,
a woman raising children in Saudi, like she did a remarkable job. So I think about strength and empowerment, and I think about that. And now where I would do things differently is being able to give people like the permission, and my kiddo the permission to make mistakes, right? With
absolutely.
her like social and like perfectionism as well, there's this idea of like, oh, you have to be perfect, right? Like you have to do things a certain way and it has to be organized a certain way. And I think, that is something that I have to step back and be like, it is okay to make a mess. It is okay to make a mistake.
Absolutely. I think we don't allow ourselves, and making mistake is such a negative connotation.
Hmm.
It is not.
Hmm.
I feel like it's not
That's how
like
you
you
learn.
learn and you grow so much. How much growth we have when we are successful?
Mhm,
Not much, but when we the success, like as this the saying that failure is the pillar of success, and it's so true.
mhm,
I mean, you go through those phases, and yes, they are hard, but then it makes you a much better person,
mhm,
a much evolved person in a better way. So I think we don't allow ourselves to make mistakes,
mhm,
and that ties back to, again, women not making mistakes, being perfect,
mhm,
imperfections not acceptable in the society, and then also, like, the mental health and everything. All these are interconnected, and I've seen that, like, other people who were, in because I was born in Bangladesh, and
mhm.
then I was partially raised in Dubai.
Okay,
So my early childhood was in Bangladesh,
okay.
and then we moved to Dubai because my dad
Mhm,
started work. So but I have seen South Asian culture, or families around, and I have seen people. How many times you have seen like people saying, oh, you're not fair enough, so you will not get
Mm,
a good husband.
mhm,
I mean, just imagine, their worth or their identity is tied to how they look,
mhm,
they appear.
mhm,
And I feel like my husband always said that your worth should be who you are, not what you wear or what you drive.
mhm,
It's what you were, what how you treat people,
mhm.
what you are inside. That should be your worth. And as long as we know what we are capable of, I think nothing should break us apart or break us. I mean, nothing should hold us back for
Mhm,
anything. But again, that needs to be said.
mhm,
It didn't happen to me in a day.
mhm.
It's that constant reminder, appreciation, encouragement. And I think he encouraged me way too much. I did not deserve that much encourage. I mean,
Aw,
like,
don't say that. I don't think that's
no, I
true.
mean, he always said that, if whenever I was the best cook and everything. So that was so kind of him. And how many people you see or I have seen growing up whose husbands have been like spouses are encouraging them in that way, or maybe their parents early on childhood have said that no, you are doing great, you are the most beautiful girl in the household, you are excelling, or even if you got a 70 or 80, that's fine. You will do better in your next test. Or if you are not good in this
Mhm,
subject, it's okay. Everybody has their own superpower, right? You
mhm.
might not be good in academics, but you might be very good in something else.
In
So,
social skills, which I think is just as important as
yes,
academics.
yes. And then excel in that. Whatever you are passionate about, excel in that. Do the be just taking out the best versions of them, like identifying the best version, just helping them be the best version.
Mhm,
That's huge, that's so
mhm,
powerful. But I don't think most of the South Asian girls, at least from the generation that I come from, they did not receive that, right?
mm,
And then
mhm.
later on in life also, how many spouses would you see are so supportive like my spouse or your spouse? Not too many, but they are becoming, it's getting better.
Mhm,
It's getting better. Its awareness is happening. And I would also like to say that mental health, right? I mean, even people are suffering. I mean, forget about the situational, the clinical depression or mental health. I mean, it's not talked about in our culture or society,
mm-mm,
right? It's still a social stigma or a taboo,
mhm.
right? I mean, I'm sure you see that all the time.
I absolutely do. I think there's so many people who still have this fear of like, oh, if I go to somebody and talk about my real feelings and emotions, again, it's tied back to like, what will people say? What would my parents say? They will think that I am weak because I couldn't navigate my feelings and emotions by myself, that I have so much that I should be grateful for. And I think you can be grateful for the things in your life that you've worked hard for or the privileges that you have in life, and at the same time work on yourself and give yourself the permission to feel what you need to feel and be able to say that, you know what, this is hard. Yes, I love the fact that I went to a great school and I have a great job because of it, but I also am really exhausted and stressed because of my job, and I think I should be able to voice that concern so that I can figure out what I need to do. And I something that you were like saying as well is that I think we, like, the women that I believe end up being the happiest or thriving in life are usually the ones that give themselves the permission, one, to feel, and they work on that, and they have the support system in their life, right? Like you were talking about, your husband being an example. I'd rather view or listen to and hear about examples in society where a guy was lifting his wife up, right? Because again, like previous generations, I know it's different for this generation, but previous generations, something was that we've raised people from a place of limitations.
Hmm.
Like the idea is, I need to teach you to do better by telling you what you don't do well so that you know what your limitation is. And then if I repeat it enough times, you're going to be like, feel bad about it so that you will change it. And that's such a negative way of teaching someone to be better, right? Like, isn't it nicer to tell somebody, like, hey, you made this and it is so amazing. It is so wonderful. I feel like that's more encouraging than, what is this? Like, what have you made? It doesn't even look good. Look
Right.
at this, look at that. Like, whether it's a food thing that you've made, the salt is less or it just tastes awful, or if it's a painting, like, what are these colors? I feel like it's so much better to receive positive validation and affirmation about things so that it encourages you to do better. And I think as women, that should be a internal dialogue. We don't need somebody to tell us that we're good enough. It should be an
We
internal
should be knowing it.
practice.
Yes, absolutely. I think
Mhm.
I tell that to my daughter. And then my kids always tell me that, oh, you have too much self-confidence. We kind of, I think, tone down a little bit. Yeah, they always tell me that. So, but I always keep telling my daughter that, you're the most beautiful girl in the world. To me,
Gosh,
she is, mashallah. And I said that, you're doing excellent in your academics, which she is doing. But
mashallah.
sometimes when she is not getting like in hundreds, and she kind of like always tells me, oh, I got a 95 in that. I said, it's okay. Even if you got a 90 or even an 80, it's fine.
Mhm,
The world will not stop. You will still excel. You will still thrive.
mhm,
And, just be happy. That's the most important thing. You're healthy, you're happy. You are with your family. That's the most important thing. But, just telling them that it's okay, I think then it takes away so much pressure
mhm,
from them. They can do like, okay, my mom is not going to judge me because I'm not getting 100. My
mhm,
mom is not going to judge me because I'm not doing that.
mhm,
She will love me regardless.
mhm,
Now don't have that pressure,
mhm,
but I can do it easily, at ease, whatever
mhm,
I'm comfortable with. And that way I think people excels a lot more
mhm,
when that pressure is taken away.
mhm,
Right. And so I think in every household, we need to tell our daughters that, it's okay. Just be yourself, true to yourself, and, know your worth. I think that defining your worth early on childhood, that I am good enough and I know it.
mhm,
Nobody is going to tell me. And even if somebody tells you, I said, you should have that courage to say that it's okay,
mhm,
you don't tell me who I am. I know who I am. So
mhm,
most of the girls are lacking that. When they are defined, their self-worth is defined by some other people,
mhm,
they are feeling self-conscious. Their self-confidence gets, you know, shattered, or their self-esteem gets crushed.
mhm,
And then all this mental illness kind of stems from all this. And then it gets
mhm,
worse eventually with time, right? So I think, as a South Asian mother, I would say to other South Asian
mhm,
mothers and to all other mothers, women out there, that appreciate your daughters enough, and to the men, of course,
mhm,
that, all the dads, brothers, that appreciate your daughters, appreciate your sisters and wives enough, because they are doing double duties. They
mhm,
are going over and beyond,
mhm,
which I think men can never do. Like the multitasking that my husband always used to say, that I don't know how you do it, because I would never be able to do so many things at the same time. And he acknowledged it. And he always told me that you're capable of doing even more. And that helped me so much.
mhm,
And I really want to tell all the men out there that, it would not only, encouraging them will not only make them better, but it will make your life so much better.
mhm,
As a community, as a family, there will be so much enrichment, right?
mhm,
The negativity will go away. So that's the purpose of my talking about mental health, because I have seen, where the mental health issues
mhm,
arise. And you being a South Asian girl, you have seen those things too. Like,
mhm,
in the household where parents would be like, if we tell our parents now, they will be like, no, what did we do wrong?
mhm.
They
Oh
will
my
not
gosh,
admit.
yes.
Yes.
There is no taking
No.
accountability and responsibility. And I think that there are certain childhood wounds, right? Where honestly, even if somebody comes to you and says that, hey, I said this to you or did this to you as a kid, it really doesn't take away from that experience because you've already lived a life and now you're in your adulthood, right? And so that's why I think it's so important that people realize that they should take the resources that they have in their life, whether it is, going to therapy, whether it is talking to close friends or family members or people that they do like enjoy spending time with, and having these conversations rooted and centered in vulnerability and talking
Very
about,
important.
like, it's so important to talk about your feelings and emotions and to create space where you can do that so that you can heal through those experiences.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. I think vulnerability, when you brought up that point, I think many women, even the women I know, there are so many empowered women, but when it comes down to being vulnerable, they feel that's the weakness, but it's
Mhm.
not.
It's a
I, th-
superpower.
it's a superpower. I think because after I lost my husband, I think I would not have lived or moved on, moved forward
Mhm.
without kind of letting my grief out or sharing it with my confidants or closest friends or
Mhm.
family, because that's the only way I kind of like, when, like, for example, in my podcast I'm talking about great things about my husband. I have the charity organization which I kind of like,
Mhm.
trying to carry on his legacy. And I do so much and talk about him all the time when I'm doing the charity work. So I think that's healing.
Mhm.
And if I am if I am being vulnerable with one of my confidants, it's not my weakness. It's
Mhm.
really, you are letting yourself, you're giving the permission to express yourself.
Mhm.
And I think most of the women don't do that because they think that they will be judged, or they're kind of like showing their weaknesses, and that's the biggest mistake. I think that's how they kind of like get bottled up,
Mhm.
and at one point they just have the meltdown.
Mhm. And I think that that's why it's also, to add on to that, like, I think it's okay to choose support systems in your life. Let's say that your family, for whatever reason, members of your family may not be your support system when it comes to being vulnerable or having these emotional conversations and dialogues. It's okay for you to seek those support systems and those safe spaces outside to be able to have that dialogue. There's a lot of healing, right? That's based in community and talking to people,
Absolutely.
and I think especially when you live in Dallas, right, there are a lot of religious places where people come together. And I think a lot of different religious institutions over here, like even if we talk about just Cullum or Roots, where they are very intentional about talking about
Mhm.
these topics,
Right.
whether it's like, what are teen troubles or parenting classes or, trying to find a good partner in life. And I think that we shouldn't live in a place where we think that we should be good at everything, right?
Right.
Especially as women, even though that is an expectation in the community, or that's just an internal dialogue that we've created, that I must be perfect and I must be perfect in everything in order to be worthy of love and attention. Like, that's something that we have to challenge, and it's okay to be a strong, independent female and also be vulnerable, and also to have a support system where you can be like, "Hey, you know what? I need help with this."
Of course.
It's very powerful to be able to say that I need help. And if you don't have that, then you need to be able to find that for your life, right? You
Right.
need to be able to, because you cannot live life alone.
You will crumble.
Yeah.
At one point you will just crumble, because I feel like if I didn't have help from my friends, my closest friends who are my confidants, who have been with me through thick and thin, I couldn't have made it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, my family, after God, my family, of course, my children who are my pillars of strength, but then
Of
I
course.
have those people in my life,
Mm-hmm.
that my few of my best friends and confidants who I can share anything with. Like, I mean, I really truly get vulnerable with them. I break down and cry, and it's okay. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think everybody needs to give themselves the permission to be vulnerable at some point. Now, saying that, you don't need to be vulnerable to everybody. The
Oh, you have
people,
to be selective
yeah,
about the people you
people you're
choose to be
vulnerable.
vulnerable with.
That's why I say that confidence,
Mm-hmm.
like, the trust, who you can actually entrust your secrets with. I mean, you need to talk about your emotions, express yourself, talk about your grief or struggles or
Mm-hmm.
whatever challenges. I mean, as human beings, we all face challenges,
Mm-hmm.
small or big,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to share that with people. Otherwise, we will not be able to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason, also, I think, like, so much like mental health or mental illnesses are going around, because people don't share or express with each other enough, or
and they just talk amongst their family, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's not really going to fix your problems, because maybe you're talking to somebody that might have actually led to you having that mental health issue,
Right.
right? Or maybe like you're not going to be able to problem solve with somebody that might actually have caused a wound in you, right? Especially if they're not willing to take responsibility or accountability. And I don't want to say this in a way of like bashing
Right.
someone,
Right.
but it's just there's a lot of power in having dialogue with somebody that has the ability to understand, and that has the ability to actually like empathize and sit with you and be able to say that, hey, you know what, I may not fully understand what you're going through, but I want you to know that I'm here in case you need anything. And I think that women who feel like they can do it all, which is a very beautiful thing because we truly can do everything, it is also okay to rest and to give
Self
yourself
care. Self.
absolutely the permission to take care of yourself, to nurture yourself the way you nurture everybody else in your life. If I had like one message, it is that you can be whatever you want. You can do whatever you want in your life, right? But taking the time to really think about what are the most important and meaningful things for you is equally important, and making sure that you're nurturing that in yourself, not that you're waiting for the right person in your life to come so that you can start experiencing those things, or waiting for the right moment in your life to reap and enjoy those things. No, be intentional about that. Do that in real time and take care of yourself. And that in itself, I find like
I
women who are thriving, you can tell that they're happy
right.
by looking at them,
Right.
that, you can experience the
It
joy.
radiates.
It radiates, and
Yes.
that is beautiful, and that's how it should be.
I think happiness, if you are not happy, you cannot make your children, your family, or you can anybody happy, or you cannot give back to the society or
You
the
can't
community.
pour from an empty cup,
No,
you
you
know.
can't. So you have to be happy, and that all comes from, like, making those human connections, being vulnerable, doing, like, taking care of yourself. Self-care is so important. I think
Mm-hmm.
women don't give themselves enough grace because they think that, okay, then we will fall behind.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's okay to kind of take a
Mm-hmm.
pause
Mm-hmm.
and do those self-care so that you can recharge and add more power to your womanhood. And so we are coming to the
Mm-hmm.
end of the podcast. I would also focus my shift from South Asian culture to, like, in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we talked about it not in this podcast, but last time when we were talking, you mentioned that the one of the primary reasons of depression is loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that people who are like thriving in their career, but they're lonely, and that's why they're, like, the depression is happening. They're so lonely. And I have seen that too, not
Mm-hmm.
being a counselor, but just interacting or meeting with so many people. I have seen that people are thriving in their career. They are the
Mm-hmm.
medical directors in reputed hospitals, but they don't have, they are researchers, but they are like so lonely that they are kind of drowning in sadness,
Mm-hmm.
and that is so sad. So I remember you mentioning a little bit about it before.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like that can be a topic in and itself, because there are two things that I usually connect to that loneliness aspect. I think, we're in a place where work from home is a thing, which I think is a really great thing. Or even if you're at work, just the amount of work that people have. So, career wise, they can be thriving and they can be doing all of these things, but there isn't a lot of opportunity of connection, right? Like when we think about somebody being lonely, it's coming from a place of wanting to have meaningful connection. I feel lonely when I feel like, yes, I don't have meaningful connections in my life. I'm not having meaningful dialogue with people. So it can lead to having a very lonely experience, right?
Right.
So there is a lot of disconnection these days. And I think that can make people feel depressed. It's like sometimes you've spent 10 years just focusing on your career, and now you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have any friends, right? Or that I've been trying really hard to find a partner, and I'm having a really difficult time in finding a partner. And that's where I was going to say that that is honestly a topic in it itself of like what's happening in today's society that's causing people to not be able to have a easier path, I want to say, in being able to find the right people or the right partners for themselves. And so I think I noticed that sometimes people experience this like I have everything in my life, right? Like I have a good job, I have a house, I have the right car, or I have all of these other things, or I'm traveling, but I don't have a partner, right? And I feel really lonely because I feel like, especially in the South Asian community, women also drive a lot of their worth from being married because people in the community are going to be like, well, you're 25 or you're
Yeah.
28. Are you married now? And I think they internalize that. And that also becomes like, oh, I'm not worthy. That's why I'm not married yet because so and so is married. But being married and happily married are two different things, right?
Right,
And
right,
I think that kind of adds to it as well is that I focused on the right things, but now I'm having a difficult time or I'm experiencing a challenge in being able to find a partner. So when I say loneliness, I think it kind of comes a little bit from whether it is that I'm an adult that's having like difficulty in my socializing and having meaningful good friendships in my life, or it could also just be from a place of like I really truly want to get married, but I'm having a difficult time finding somebody.
right. And then, I mean, I'm not saying that, go and find,
Mhm.
I don't want to give this wrong message that go and find somebody
Oh
just to
yeah,
be,
absolutely.
no,
That's
no,
not
no,
it.
because, you are worthy yourself. So
Absolutely.
if you
Never
are having,
settle.
yeah, I always believe that we women, we should never settle, not in
Never.
20s, not in 30s, not in 40s, and not in 50s. Because if you are settling down, you're compromise, you're giving in,
Mhm.
because you should have very high standards. Like, only be with someone if you are truly in love, you are
Yes,
respected, honored, and you have the
absolutely.
mutual respect and honor for each other, and you have the immense love, because I think the foundation needs to be love.
It needs to be love. And, like, love means different things for different people. And what I
Right,
mean by that is that there are actionable things that go with being in love, right?
right,
Somebody can feel a lot of love when they're comfortable with their partner, or they have shared values, or they feel respected, or they feel empowered and supported by their partner. And for different women, that can look different. And I think it should be encouraged, right, to be able to
right.
explore that more and not to settle, which is why I think it's important to be like, what am I actually looking for
For
in my life? And now, if I were to do that with a partner, what would that look like together? So I think that kind of
the
makes,
connection, I
yeah.
think, the connection, human connection, like, I knew from my early teens that I want to marry this person, my husband. And he knew that too. I did not even have to think twice. We were childhood sweethearts. Our families were, my dad and my father-in-law, they were best friends. And our grandfathers also knew each other.
Oh,
So
wow, that's really amazing,
I
mashallah.
know. And then, so I knew it. So you have to know who is that person. You cannot settle in, because I feel that's where, like, most of
Hmm.
the people just settle. Um,
They're like, I have to get
I have to get
married,
married, I have to
which
have
is not
family.
okay.
No, you can get married and you can have family, but what's after that?
Yeah.
You will be
Is it
unhappy
going to
and be
make you
miserable.
happy? Hmm.
It will be miserable. So only be with somebody who you truly love and you have that connection with. I think that is very important. So when we come down to that loneliness, I think when people are like, they don't actually know what's the true meaning of happiness, right? They feel like,
Hmm.
okay, if I'm having an amazing job, if I become a doctor or a surgeon or somebody, I'll be making tons of money and I'll be super happy. I'll be able to, it will
Hmm.
give me that bandwidth to do anything and everything. Um, I'll buy a car, like my
Hmm.
favorite car. I will build a house in the most richest neighborhood or wherever they want
Hmm.
to build a house. But after that, what happens? Right?
Hmm.
You are still lonely, you're unhappy, so you missed out that human connection.
Hmm.
So I think that is really, really important when you are, growing and building yourself, to also be connected
Hmm.
with with the surroundings, with the community, and not detaching yourself.
Mhm. And I think I want to, I know we're coming to an end, but if I could add to that, I think the last thing that I would add is that, when we think about loneliness, right, the gift of loneliness is like it tells us that you need connection in your life. And connection can come in a lot of different ways, right? Connection can be that, let's say after work, I could be part of a women's yoga class and have a meaningful dialogue with women over there, or it could be going to a community event at the masjid. Or it could be that, I really want to take time and be intentional about finding the right person for myself. Connection can mean a lot of different
Right.
things, and there are a lot of different ways of being able to achieve it. And so, if you find yourself experiencing loneliness and because of that you're feeling like anxious or stressed or depressed, it's like a opportunity to be like, what can I do to not feel this way? What are the things that I can seek that are going to help me feel better? But what we cannot do and should not do is dismiss our very real feelings and emotions about things. So it means that if I'm uncomfortable because of a feeling and an emotion, I have to give myself the permission to go to that discomfort and be like, where is this coming from? And what can I do to make the changes that are needed? And then come up with a plan instead of it being like, oh no, I'm not allowed to feel this way. I need to just kind of continue with my routine and
Mask it
just,
up.
yeah, mask it and dismiss it and minimize it. Don't do that. Like, give yourself the permission to ultimately feel and create a plan based on that. So,
Well, with that, we come to the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Salia, for being a part of this, and wish you all the best
thank you.
in your future endeavors. And with that, we come to the end. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It was such a wonderful opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Of
Thank you.
course.